Score. I believe we're talking about Postgres database, the RDS Postgres database.
We coming for you, nigga. 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 We coming for you, nigga.
Really?
We coming for you, nigga.
Really?
We coming for you, nigga.
Really?
We coming for you, nigga.
Finally!
We coming for you, nigga.
Mikasa Sukasa. You Eddie, right?
Yeah.
Look like Eddie Guerrero, man. You like to watch wrestling?
Yep.
Have you ever watched wrestling? On weed? That's the way to see it, man! It's rock!
you, nigga. We coming for 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 you, nigga.
Really?
We coming for you, nigga.
Really?
We coming for you, nigga.
Really?
We coming for you, nigga.
Finally!
What up, world? It's your boy Physics here on February 11th, and you know what time it is. It is Friday, and welcome to the Wild News Joint. On today's episode, we're talking about Shida's warning to other Japanese women coming to AEW, the reason we're getting Switchblade Jay White in AEW, why Kyle O'Reilly left WWE/NXT, and more right after this.
Really? This is my yard now. It doesn't matter what your
Wow Nation, what up? Thank y'all for joining me today. Shout out to everybody that's in here. Kid Get Money is in the building. The super villain Gruss is also in the building. Thank y'all for being up in here. We are super appreciated. We're going to get down to the news and everything going on today. And first of all, we're starting it with Shida giving a warning to all the Joshi wrestlers about coming into AEW. Former AEW Women's World Champion Hikaru Shida recently penned down a column for Weekly Pro Wrestling in the Japanese weekly publication. Through the piece, Shida detailed the various challenges faced by herself and other Japanese female wrestlers in AEW. In it, she states, "My feelings is that the hurdle for Japanese women's pro wrestlers to come to AEW has become much higher. The major cause is the Corona disaster, which is not easy to finish, and it's because the AEW women's division has grown so much in the past year." She goes on, "At the time of the launch, the women's division of AEW relied heavily on Japanese female pro wrestlers, and that was one of the selling points of the division. But that was only for a while after the launch. Nowadays, being a Japanese female pro wrestler is not as much as an advantage as it used to be." She followed that up with, "On the contrary, it has become more of a handicap in terms of language barrier, obtaining a work visa in a Corona disaster. I myself am no exception to this, and even as a member of the AEW since its inception and a former women's champion, I am struggling to survive in the current AEW. In AEW, there is a high degree of freedom for the players, but because of that, everything is their responsibility. For example, there is basically no assistance from the organization in finding a place to live, even if you are Japanese. That's how it was for me. So when I heard that Sakura-san was moving to the US, I was worried. I've been studying English since I was a child, and I speak English better than most people think, but I still had a lot of trouble. Sakura-san, on the other hand, was at a level where even daily conversations was questionable. Even so, she found a room on her own and is desperately trying to seize the opportunity at AEW. But even though she came to America with such determination, she was not given a chance to participate in the TV matches. There is a fierce battle to get a chance to compete before you can show off your skills in a match. That is what AEW is today." Now, I find this quite interesting. A few things that I do find interesting with this whole thing is the fact that so you built the back of the AEW women's division on these Joshi wrestlers. You bring them over to the US. First of all, it's hard to get visas for anything, especially work visas, but you bring them in, you got them here, you want them here for at least a year, and you don't pay or help with assistance to live in, like, especially the fact that um like some do have a language barrier, so you want them to go to a realtor and hope that one, they don't get jerked because the realtor is a asshole and goes, well, they're not from here, they have no idea how much things actually cost, so I'm going to make sure that the money is a lot higher so I can get paid, hand over fist. Like, you have these women coming over here and you're basically making sure they're getting taken advantage of because you're not helping. I feel like if you want somebody, it's almost like any job that wants you to relocate. Unless you have the funds to do it, I'm not relocating unless you're going to pay for me to move. And not only that, help me or at least give me time to find a place rather than, hey, you're signed to AEW. Now you got to find a place. Hurry up. And hope that some wrestler has time to teach you the ropes and be able to actually help you. And as you said, they have really backed away. Unless you're going to be watching AEW Dark, you're not really going to see any of them. Shida hasn't been seen since early January with Serena D, but even before then, she took a break. And then Rio ended up injured, so we're not going to even see her for a hot minute. So the fact that they built this division off the back of them and now they're just seen as an afterthought. I mean, I kind of feel like almost, unfortunately, everyone is seen as an afterthought. As much praise as AEW has been getting for their women's division, because they do have a good amount. I also felt like with the TBS belt, they couldn't figure out and they didn't want Britt Baker to actually have to go against somebody and lose the belt anytime soon. I mean, once the whole Ruby Soho thing started and she easily got over that, I was like, yeah, this is pretty much, she's going to have this until they find a bigger star that has the possibility of taking the belt off of her. Because that bigger star looked like it was going to be Jade Cargill, but once they gave her the TBS belt, that means you separated her away. And as Kid Get Money says, you barely see women's wrestlers in AEW anyways. Yeah, I mean, you get one match. You'll get a Britt Baker promo, and that's about it. But they're getting a ton of praise because, that's what's happening right now. And I feel like they're getting a ton of praise because what a mess WWE is. So it's not like you have to do too much. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were really complaining about how Kenny and everybody else was really running the women's division. On top of that, you have the whole situation with Big Swole, which was not a good look and still not a good look. And like, you built your back on Joshi wrestlers, and now that you have a lot of stateside wrestlers that you can depend on, now you have your back turned on them. Like, that's not good. If you're gonna bring them over to wrestle, make sure they have a place to stay. Make sure that they actually have help. Don't WWE it, which they're actually doing. Like, if they can't cut a promo in English, like, you have a bunch of vignettes that you filmed before. You could do subtitles. People don't mind reading. Allow them to do this. So some of the best stuff WWE has ever done with Io Shirai is when they allow her to be a badass and speak in Japanese. Like, that shit is great. Rather than force them to have to cut a promo in English when we know they can cut a better one in their given language, just allow them to do it. So like everybody's happy at the end of the day. And don't make it seem like wrestling fans are illiterate and that's the reason why you can't do this. Like, give us a break. We're smart enough for this shit. But moving on to the next one, let's talk about the introduction of Jay White in AEW. As stated on this past Wednesday's news joint, Tony Khan put his promoter hat on and went all in, no pun intended, on breaking down the Forbidden Door. He did it so much that he turned that Forbidden Door into a panic room. He tried to cover his own ass by reworking the definition of what a Forbidden Door is and differentiating between walking through it and opening it and slamming it and fucking the door and all types of other things. But he took to his Twitter once again to write, I didn't secure Jay White until Sunday. I realized after the fact that Friday night I butchered my own definition of Forbidden Door and hyping tonight. I heard the fans' feedback and wanted to ensure that tonight was a special AEW Dynamite for all. thank you everyone for watching. And we're gonna have Jay White for the foreseeable future. I believe he's definitely showing up tonight, but it's just funny that he did all of this and then was like, oh shit, like Keith Lee coming in is a big deal, but it's not as big of a deal as I made it. He's a free agent. There's not many places we think he will go. I mean, you have Impact Wrestling, you have MLW, and you have AEW. He's already living in Florida. AEW station there. Might as well just stay. He just got married. He's not going to be going too far. So it's just hilarious that he went through all of this and then had to backtrack, boom, bring Jay White in. We get in Bullet Club references left and right. And it seems like he's gonna be there. No Tama Tonga, no. I mean, they gotten rid of the Good Brothers. I don't see them doing anything anytime soon. God don't seem to be coming anywhere near it. Their appearances, it seems to be strictly to Impact Wrestling. And it seems like Impact is the ones that are going to be benefiting from all of this. They're getting better views due to this. Gruss says Tony Khan has slowly become in Dixie Carter. That would be super unfortunate if that is the case. But hey, I feel like we're gonna get Jay White for about a month, and then we'll probably never see him again. It seems like when it comes to a lot of these Forbidden Door things, especially when it comes to Impact and New Japan Pro Wrestling, there's never really like a big overarching thing that's going to happen. It just happens for a hot minute. We get possibly a pay-per-view match, and then we just move on from it. And then it's not talked about it's talked about like it never existed or anything that has ever happened. I mean, we have Kenta pop up, and that was the gist of it. He popped up, everybody went crazy, and then we moved on. So I feel like that's where we are with this, and I feel like that's where we're gonna stay with it. But moving on to the next one, we're gonna go to Kyle O'Reilly and why he left NXT. During the interview on the session with Renee Paquette, Kyle O'Reilly explained why he decided to leave WWE and sign with AEW late last year. First, he touched on some of the chaos behind the scenes in AEW, especially his contract status. He wrote, when we were negotiating, the powers that be were like, listen, this doesn't typically happen. Usually we would sign guys 6 months out, but talent relations at the time, I guess, let things slip or weren't into re-upping NXT guys' contracts is the only explanation I could give. I really don't know. But I thought I had at least maybe 6 months to a year left. It was a real surprise to me knowing that it was coming up to in December. A pleasant surprise. Just with the landscape and everything, it was really kind of a blessing that I was given an opportunity to make my own decision. I feel for people who get released and everything, and that happens way more than it should. It's awful. O'Reilly was under the impression there wasn't a good spot for him in the new XT, and he wasn't ready to just be a coach. He said that was a huge selling point too. The AEW locker room is full of the guys that I came up with in the business that I've been friends with for years. And there was a lot of that in NXT too, but it seemed like every couple of weeks you looked around the locker room just getting decimated. It was just not a very good environment, I guess, at the time. And then he finished off with, he was told that we don't want pro wrestlers. We don't want pro wrestler with something I heard. And it was like, okay, well, I'm a pro wrestler and I want to be a pro wrestler still. So I'm going to go where I can be a pro wrestler. And just from that, we already know there is a few months back, they were told that, yeah, they're moving away from indie wrestlers. If you made your name on the indie scene, you're not likely going to get picked up from NXT or WWE. They're looking for former wrestlers that were wrestling collegiate, UFC wrestlers. They're looking for football players, and they're looking for fitness models, which they can then mold into the wrestling style that they want. But I feel doing that, the sad thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a bunch of wrestlers doing kind of the same thing. And think about it. Some of the best wrestling happened, especially going from the late 80s into the 90s into the Attitude Era, was because we had a bunch of wrestlers from different places. You had wrestlers from Stampede. They were from Stampede. They were part of the Hart Foundation. They were part of the Hart family. So you had this concept of how they were going to wrestle. You had wrestlers that cut their teeth in Japan, now coming back and then doing it in WWE or WCW. Had luchador wrestlers, a different style, going to WCW, and then that cruiserweight style then making its way into WWE. You have all these styles, and it makes for an interesting product. It's like having two dancers from two different styles and being like, hey, now dance together. Not knowing what either one is going to do, just put them there, tell them in a freestyle, and magic can happen. And that's what happens when you put two people that have two different type of disciplinaries in a ring and allowing them to figure it out. Magic can happen. But when you have two people that are basically the same, it's only going to go so far as what was planned before they got out there. Making things up is most likely not going to happen till years later. And I feel like we're going to have a lot of wrestlers that could be great, but won't be great till years later. I feel like that was Roman. Roman in FCW, nothing really. He had a cocky gimmick, which was pretty cool. Nobody was mad at that. He gets to the Shield. Out of Dean Ambrose and out of Seth Rollins, he wasn't that good because they had already cut their teeth on the indie scene. They knew what they were doing in the ring. It took a while. And once he got it, he's been great, but it took a long time to get here. Like, he's to a point where even if you hate him, you can't deny how great he is in the ring. But in the past, you could, because he wasn't that guy yet. So that's why we are here. And if you look, Braun Breaker was brought into NXT without any wrestling before, other than his daddy. Almost everybody, and there's just a large group of NXT wrestlers that had nothing to do without it, which is why I feel like, I'll talk about it later, but WWE kind of feels like they effed up with Jade Cargill because she felt that mode. Former basketball player into fitness. She came to the performance center. She was super green, but this is before they were like, you know what? We don't care if you're super green. If you have a look and you don't actually pro wrestle, you can come. If they had that mindset then, we'd be watching her NXT and we wouldn't be watching her at AEW prosper. Gross writes, Roman 2015 was the best. It just seems like to me, it kind of feels like once the leukemia thing happened and then he had to leave, it felt like he was just watching wrestling like it was tape. Like he was getting ready for the next game and he just watched almost every great wrestling tape he could, took what he needed to take, and he's been great ever since. Like, the run he's been on since he made that surprise, what was it, after SummerSlam, it has been amazing. Tribal Chief era is kind of untouchable, and I don't know when it's going to stop, but I don't want it to stop anytime soon. Moving on to our next story, which is our last story. Impact Knockouts War Champion Mickie James believes the WWE Impact partnership, which facilitated her entry in last month's 30-woman Royal Rumble, is not a one-and-done deal. Speaking with Denise Salcido of Instant Culture, James was optimistic that the two promotions will collaborate again in the future. She stated, I think, yes, we will work together again. I don't know that it will be immediately. I think this was an opportunity for WWE to test the waters to see if it was something people talk. People talk and they say this will be great and this will get a lot of ratings and this will be a big buzz. But until it actually in front of them, I think they can't actually see it. And that's really it. You can mention everything to WWE about how great this will be. Writers have been doing it. Producers have been doing it. It's like, this is going to be great. This is going to be big. But they can't see it unless they see the numbers. there's no numbers attached and it's a hypothetical or it's a dream match, they just don't even believe in it. And Mickey James goes on to say, maybe somebody else should probably pop up. I feel that now that they see the potential and how the fans responded to it, the idea of it happening with the men or with the world championships or something like that, now at least the idea of that possibility and that door is open. And I know she is mentioning Moose. If you saw my prediction was that Moose will pop up. Super crazy. I didn't actually think it was going to happen, but I just wanted to put it in the universe so that it's a possibility that it can. I know for a fact, and we all noticed that when his contract was coming up before he resigned with Impact, WWE wanted him. Former football player. Now he wrestles for Impact, but he went from, doing a little bit of indie, going into Impact, making his name, and now he could jump into WWE. He already has a little bit of back and forth with Roman Reigns. He's really good on the mic. I feel like their only real issue with Moose is that his roommate is Apollo Crews, and Apollo could tell him all the fuck shit that is going on within WWE. So, like, he's going to be prepared. Like, nothing's going to catch him off guard as far as what's going on in the world of wrestling in WWE, in the WWE universe. So they can't really jerk him around when it comes to it. And they know if they bring him in, he has to be a big player. Like, you just can't have him sitting on the sidelines. That's just not what Moose is. But they saw how big the biggest pop that night was Mickey James. Point blank, period. They've already talked about, like, we need a big match. I was like, if you want a big match for WrestleMania, we'll be talking to them about having a champion versus champion match. Not Roman. I mean, if Moose versus Bobby Lashley would be great, but Mickey James versus Becky Lynch will also be great. And throw in Bianca Belair. Like, if you're going to do it, and hey, if both belts can be online and Bianca Belair can have both belts and be doing Impact in WWE, I say go for it. It'd be the biggest thing, and I feel like Impact will sign off on it, and I feel like Mickey James will sign off on it. But I feel like they have their foot in the door, but it is not fully open, and I think they should go for it. If you want to make this WrestleMania and you want to make up for how shitty Royal Rumble was, this is the perfect way to do it. Now, let's move on to some quick hits. And we're starting off the quick hits with the information that Backlash will be back Sunday, May 8th at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, Rhode Island. As you can see, we already kind of being hyped about what's going to be at Backlash. We have Becky Lynch, we have Ronda Rousey, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, Sasha Banks, and Charlotte on the cover. And if you know, they did the smart thing of not putting a belt on any of the actual champions because you don't want to telegraph what's going to happen in the future. So Backlash is the next pay-per-view coming up in May. Now, someone who witnessed the backstage chaos involving Shane McMahon at Royal Rumble 2022 told that Matt Menz and Drew Zarian that there's a bigger story to this and maybe one day it will come out. The thing is, Shane is still working with WWE, so him going through the forbidden door to AEW is not happening anytime soon because he's doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff. This is a picture with him or Marco Mazzotti, who is a rugby owner. He wrote, "So grateful for a night with brother Shane McMahon, son of WWE Vince, and Doug Seafood, co-owner of the Florida Panthers. Excited for a partnership between WWE and rugby." So looks like WWE is getting a rugby business. Of course, they also look at rugby players to be wrestlers as well. So I'm pretty sure they're also doing that as well. Ringside News was told that WWE made a decision on Shane McMahon's WrestleMania replacement as soon as they sent him home. So the rumors that they've been shuffling and trying to figure out what to do next with WWE, with that spot for WrestleMania seems to be full blown. They already kind of know what's going on and they're going to go from there. Andrew Zarian claims to know for a fact that WWE is now interested in Jade Cargill after seeing her perform on AEW television. I guess they felt like, well, we don't have time to promote her and make her big, so we're just going to have somebody else do it, and we're going to pick off from there. Say what else we got. Wrestling Observer Radio's Dave Meltzer said Drew McIntyre is not 100% recovered from his neck issues. He's still doing rehab and won't work house shows for now. The idea is to keep him on television, but with a lighter workload. WWE recently filed to trademark Kelly Kincaid in WWE Sunday Stunner. Wednesday's live AEW Dynamite drew 1.129 million viewers on TBS, according to Nielsen via Show Buzz Daily. This is up 18.34% from last week's episode, which drew 954,000 viewers. This week's Dynamite drew a 0.41 rating in the 18 to 49 demo this week. This is up from 17.14 from last week's 0.35 rating. This week's 0.41 key demo rating represents 541,000 viewers who watched the show from 18 to 49. This is up from 456,000. Dynamite ranked 1 on the cable top 150 this week with 0.41 rating in the 18 to 49 demo. This is up from last week's 3 ranking. Wednesday's Dynamite drew the best audience for the show since September 29th. Which is really good. And the 18 to 49 key demo rating was tied with January 26th Beach Break Show for the third best key demo rating since the move to TBS. The Daily Island has reported the former WWE Tag Team Champion Samu Anoa'i has signed a Legends contract with WWE. The report describes the deal as a WWE nostalgia contract that will involve allowing Vince McMahon's company to use his likeness and request to appear for special appearances. Samu is a part of the famous Anoa'i family and the son of Alpha of the former Wild Samoan tag team who held 21 tag team champions around the world. He is also cousin to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Yokozuna, Rosie, and Umaga, which makes it seem they are about to start getting the ball rolling when it comes to The Rock versus Roman Reigns next year. Do not be surprised if you see a bunch of the Anoa'i family popping up, taking sides between The Rock and Roman Reigns to who's the real, head of the table, and going from there. I feel like the storyline is going to be one about family. And an update, the Wrestling Observer Newsletter reports that there was word within WWE a few weeks back that said Tyson Kidd was quitting the company, but that was chalked up to the miscommunication. As you know, he was not a producer for this past Royal Rumble, especially the Women's Royal Rumble, and it showed. It was then said that Kidd will be back to work soon and that he's on good terms with WWE. Kidd is reportedly taking time off to help heal his neck. He suffered a career-ending injury while taking a muscle buster from Samoa Joe during a Raw Dark match on June 1st, 2015. It's been said that Kidd is lucky to be alive. That is a miracle he's not confined to a wheelchair, as he had an injury similar to what the late Christopher Reeve suffered. While he has made significant progress over the years, he has also stated that he's at peace with never wrestling again. The Observer added that while Kidd is able to function well, that doesn't change the fact that his neck is in terrible shape and can flare up. As reported earlier this month by Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp that there was talks of Kidd being frustrated with the company. One source reportedly stated that Kidd didn't show up and wasn't happy with how things were going and was no longer there. But other sources, including the company, insisted Kidd was still employed. Kidd was last listed as a WWE producer on January 10th, Raw, and the January 14th SmackDown. So wish that man nothing but a speedy recovery. He's been dealing with this neck injury for like almost 7 years, like 6 years, 7 years at this point. So just wish him the best. But let's talk about what's going on in the world of wrestling tonight. Tonight's WWE SmackDown on Fox will air live from the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, Louisiana. Ronda Rousey will appear. WWE Hall of Famer Bill Goldberg will appear. Natalya versus Leah in a dungeon-style match. And SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair will defend against Naomi. In addition to airing a live SmackDown episode, WWE will tape the February 18th Elimination Chamber Go Home episode tonight in New Orleans because they will be traveling to Saudi Arabia next Friday for the Chamber event. WWE has announced just one match for the February 18th tape, and that's the WWE Intercontinental Champion Shinsuke Nakamura going against Sami Zayn. Now let's talk about AEW and what's going on tonight for Rampage. For Rampage, we have Bryan Danielson on the microphone, Hook versus Blake Lee, the Young Bucks versus Roppongi Vice, which Trent Beretta and Rocky Romero. we have Robin Renegade versus AEW champion Britt Baker in a non-title match. And I guarantee you that Switchblade will be popping up. Now, make sure if you're watching both of these tonight, make sure that you check in, hit that notification bell to be notified when Lalo goes live to break down the Blunt Ratings for SmackDown as well as AEW Rampage to see what his thoughts were. Make sure to leave a comment on all the news stories that were going on today. Let me know what you think. I do be checking the comments, so I will reply. If you disagree or you agree or you have ideas about what could possibly happen with everything that was stated today, everybody here, enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. And I definitely will be seeing y'all on Monday.
Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to know when we go live next. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Wrestling on We, and thanks for watching.